Hello and welcome to Naad Education. In this series of lectures, we try to clear our basics of biology. And before this lecture 3, I have done two other lectures in which I have been talking about phylogenetics, what is classification, what are the types of classification, and today in this third lecture I will be talking about phylogenetics and cladistics and some of the terms that are related to the same. So let's start. So characters and homologs or homologous characters. So before we move on to what is phylogenetics, what is cladistics and other important terms, we will first talk about what are characters. So characters are the observable features and expressions of the genotype, and they can be anything from the actual amino acid sequences of the genes or the phenotypic expressions of the genotype. So it can be anything at the cellular level, at tissue level, or at the observe at the organism level, where you can see the skin color, type, a number of hair, the color of the iris, anything, or the length of a tail in an animal. All the traits that you can observe are called as characters. Characters and traits are the same things. And whether at the cellular level, at the tissue level, at the organ level, you can characterize any sort of character. Everything is a trait. Now, what are homologs? Homologs are characters that are present in two or more taxa but are traceable phylogenetically and ontogenetically to the same character in the common ancestor of those taxa. So, homologs are the traits that help you compare these two taxa because these are the characters or traits that were present in the common ancestor, and um, they are also present in the two taxa, which give us a hint that these two taxa might have been derived from that common ancestor, and that's why these two taxa are related and might have diverged due to certain reasons. So that's how you can establish relationships between taxa. In order to compare characters among different organisms or group of organisms, it must be established that the characters being compared are homologous. So the two characters based on which you are, or the sort of character that you are using to compare these organisms, whether these two taxa or organisms or species are related to each other evolutionary, it requires that the traits that you are comparing among them are homologous traits. These traits come from the same ancestor, and that's why you are trying to look at a relationship between these two taxa. Now let's discuss some of the terms that are related to the study of phylogenetics and cladistics. So first is plesiomorphy. The characters or traits present in ancestors, that is, they were found a long time ago in ancestral species, they are called as plesiomorphies. Characters that are found in species of recent origin and are derived from previous character states are called apomorphies, or they are also known as derived character states. Plesiomorphies are also known as ancestral character states. Synapomorphies are the apomorphies or the recent character states that are shared by more than one taxa. So any two taxa, if they have the same sort of apomorphies, they are known as synapomorphies. And then there's another term called symplesiomorphies, which are the plesiomorphies shared by two or more taxa. So there are certain ancestral traits or ancestral character states that were in the ancestors, and now they are shared by or they are seen in more than one taxa. So these are some of the terms that have been used in um, the studies of phylogenetics and cladistics, and they should not get you confused. Now let's come to the main topic of today, which is what is phylogenetics and what is a phylogenetic tree. Phylogenetics is the study of the evolutionary history of life. In phylogenetics, we establish the relationship between organisms or taxa using empirical data from DNA sequences, protein and amino acid sequences, and morphology. So, based on characters, now these are all characters that we just talked about. So, they can be DNA sequences or morphological traits or physiological traits or protein or amino acid sequences. These can be used to establish relationship between taxa, and that's how we understand the evolutionary relationship of the taxa. And this study of the evolutionary history and evolutionary relationships is known as phylogenetics. We can construct a phylogenetic tree by looking at the nucleotide or protein sequences and combining this with our understanding of sequence evolution, which is described using an evolutionary model. In simple words, what you need to understand is that using nucleotide or protein sequences, we try to understand the evolution of the sequence, and by that we construct a tree understanding which organism or what was the ancestral state of the species, and what are and how is it related and how has it diverged to form the species of recent origin. This enables us to infer evolutionary events that happened in the past and also provides more information about the evolutionary process operating on sequences. Thus, we may refine our understanding of evolution and develop better evolutionary models. So, all this study helps us to basically predict or better understand the process of evolution, and using sequence data we can understand how has the sequence data changed, how has the structure of the gene and then subsequently the structure of the protein has changed, which gives us the and over generations and over the course of many years to understand how has the function in an organism has how has the function in the current organisms have changed compared to the ancestral state. Now let's talk about the phylogenetic tree. A phylogenetic tree is a branching diagram depicting the relationships among group of organisms. The base of the phylogenetic tree represents the oldest or the earliest ancestors, and the higher branches indicates successively more recent divisions of evolutionary lineages. And phylogenetic trees can be constructed based on any character such as morphology, gene sequence data, etc. And some phylogenetic trees also have a time axis. So these were some points about the phylogenetic tree. We have already discussed a lot of related things before. We now talk about some other important terms that are used in phylogenetic studies, such as monophyletic, paraphyletic, and polyphyletic groups. Number one is, what is a monophyletic group? A monophyletic group is a group of species that includes all the descendants of a common ancestor. It is also called a natural group or clade. You must have heard the word clade, and based on the word clade, the studies are known as cladistics. This we will discuss in the next slide. The species in a monophyletic group are related to one another through a unique history of descent from common ancestor. So if you see the diagram A, there is the common ancestor B, and when you create a group which includes B and all the descendants from B, then it is a monophyletic group. Sometimes what happens is you have a group in which you do have the common ancestor, and you also have the individuals that are derived from the common ancestor but does not have all the individuals that were derived from the common ancestor, and you have such sort of a group. So due to lack of knowledge, you did not include all, or the previous people did not include all the individuals that were derived from this common ancestor, and that is when you have a paraphyletic group that you can see in figure C. Lastly, we have polyphyletic group. So if you create a group in which there are species that arose from two or more different immediate ancestors. So in diagram B, you can see that both E and G arose from different immediate common ancestors such as C and F, and you clubbed the species E and G into one group, creating a polyphyletic group. This can happen when you are looking at, let's say, a morphological character, and let's say you looked at wings of these two organisms. Let's take a crude example. Let's say you looked at the bird and you looked at a bat. Both of them have wings, only to you won't realize, and you have clubbed them as winged organisms. But the trait that you see in these two have originated independently from different common ancestors. So this is when you create a group which has individuals from different immediate ancestors, and this is called a polyphyletic group. So the reason why we end up creating a polyphyletic group is due to evolutionary convergence of characters. The characters that you chose to group these species might have converged evolutionary. They might have evolved independently in the two species, and you might have concluded that this character was present in the common ancestor, which was not the case. So last few terms that also pop up when we talk about phylogenetics and cladistics. Cladistics, the study of cladistics comes from the word clad, which is the same, and you know that the clad is a monophyletic group that we just talked about. Cladistics is an approach to biological classification in which organisms are characterized in groups based on hypotheses of most recent common ancestry. So when you are creating a tree and you create a group based on the based on a clade, so you have the common ancestor and all the derived individuals from that common ancestor, then you are using the clade as a taxa, and you are using the clade to create a taxa, and that is what that approach is what you call as cladistics. There is another term called cladogenesis. It is an evolutionary splitting of parent species into two distinct species forming a clade. So these are the terms that have been used. This is not a very detailed video about phylogenetics. We are just covering the terms and definitions here and a rough idea about these things, because this is a series of lectures for some basics to be covered in biology before we can move on to advanced stuff. So with this we come to the end of this lecture. If you have any confusion or you have any request for detailed notes or any other help with this topic, then feel free to put it in the comment section, and please share this video with your friends, like and subscribe the channel. I will be posting many more videos, and my main aim is to make you understand stuff. So if you do not, then please give your reviews. How would you like to understand? What are your criticisms? I will happily try to make my videos better. Thank you. Have a nice day. See you soon.